caused pain and the feeling of his teeth. Yeah, the tension, it was shorter when a room full of doubters heard it speak. Well, those long days in laboratories, they got lonely, but we're working since the toaster learned to breathe. Progress takes practice. Patience is a virtue not many have. They'll say it's your
Hi, and welcome to another live episode of the Naturopathic Perspective. My name is Andrew Alshouse. I'm the host for the show, and this week we've got an exciting week with Dr. Patrick Donovan. He's here to talk to us about the healing journey, and we also have the ability to call in. Remember, it's a live show, so you can call in at 206-421-5004. And call in and ask your questions about Dr. Donovan and how he practices natural medicine. We also have, over here we've got Chris, our usual helpful co-host. And we also have a special guest, Dr. Donovan's significant other, Taylor?
Taylor.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with what is your practice like? What is the healing journey?
Well, two different questions.
Two different questions.
What is my practice like? Well, it's primary care, naturopathic primary care, which in this state is, we are licensed as primary care physicians. And as a primary care physician, I see a lot of families. I see a lot of individuals of all ages. And I see many medical conditions from sore throats and earaches to cancer, multiple sclerosis, various autoimmune disorders.
So kind of like a family doctor? Do you see somebody throughout their lifetime then?
I can. I still have people coming back to me. I've been practicing at that particular site for about 12 years now. And I've seen a lot of patients grow up and who are now graduating from college that I started with as children.
And so what about the healing journey? What is the healing journey?
What is the healing journey? We're all on a healing journey. We're all here with a theme to our lives. And that theme is built around what we're here to develop, what skills we have, what gifts we've come in with, and what deficits we may have that we're here to work with.
Are the deficits then what people are complaining about? Is that problems in people's lives?
Could be. The healing journey basically is the journey through what the great mystics call the dark night of the soul. And easily stated, the healing journey is like a rebooting of your computer. When your program gets stuck in a program that's not working any longer, and often disease for a lot of us is the evidence of our internal psychical or consciousness program. Culturally induced, socially induced, familial induced, genetically induced, whatever. All of those factors take part in creating this program that we see the world and experience the world from. Sometimes aspects of that program get stuck.
Yeah.
And just like a computer, when the program gets stuck, the best way to deal with it is to reboot. And in a sense, the dark night of the soul and the healing journey is about that rebooting process, because it's moving from this stuck program into a type of death or transformational change from one state to a new state.
So do people continue to live after the program's gotten stuck, or after everything's gotten stuck? What is that like?
I mean, I remember 14 years old watching people live in what I thought then were stuck programs from my external perspective of their lives. you know, the big pot-bellied guys sitting in the easy chair with a can of beer watching TV for 6 hours every night, and their wife sitting at the other corner of the room, you know, knitting, no conversation, probably not having any sexual relations for years.
Is that for you to decide on, though?
No, I said it's not for me to decide. It was my perspective from an external sense.
So if I'm happy with my life, and do I need a healing journey?
Your life is a healing journey no matter what. It's
so whether I recognise
it
as such, it doesn't necessarily mean...
Yeah. And as I write about in my book, The Face of Consciousness, through this journey, there are two types of death that we can choose. One is the death of entropy. Entropy in scientific terminology being that place where everything collapses back to nothing. There is no activity, there is no energy put in or put out. There is no identity. The system doesn't exist anymore. And so that's one form of death, the death of entropy. It's the death of all identity. Okay. It's the death of stasis, if you will. Then there's the death of chaos. The death of chaos, again, well described in scientific literature that's coming out now in chaos science and systems theory, is that death of transition. So it's a death of one state that changes, that transforms into a different state. Best example is what we see with a butterfly. It goes in a caterpillar and comes out a butterfly.
Okay.
And in that place, inside that chrysalis, inside that cocoon, there's a transformation taking place. And that's one of nature's examples about this journey, about this transformational journey. That's the death we can choose.
Okay.
That's the death that brings us into greater life. From a spiritual perspective, we hear reference to that death, particularly, you know, for Christian beliefs. We hear it when Jesus says, "He who will give his life in my name shall find greater life." So, where there is death, out of that death comes greater life. That's the mystical journey.
And how do I recognise my own death, as it were, of the death that I need to take to get my journey
well,
on the way?
Well, you just died.
Are you helping me to find this journey?
How do you
to find this death?
How do I facilitate
yes.
that?
Thank you.
Thank you. By, first of all, hearing your story, taking the time to sit and listen, and in a sense to witness your story. That's what I think we're all here about, is to witness each other's stories. And so by witnessing the story, if I clearly pull away my cultural dogma, my social dogma, my personal dogma, and I'm open and receptive and listen to the story, a theme begins to emerge. We were talking earlier before the program started about this breast cancer patient.
Yeah.
And as I listened to her discussion, it was about a greatly disillusioned creative individual who fell into a cultural norm and dogma of a father who thought a woman should never become a dancer or do anything like that. And a husband she married who, like for many, our spouses become an extension of a parent, a mother or father. He became the extension of the father who really restricted her.
And how did you help this woman then?
By sitting and listening to her theme and finding out here is this great creative individual who wanted more than anything to be dancing again. And as a little girl dreamt about dancing and was taking dancing lessons, wanted to be a ballerina, and then started in modern dance in college. And married a man who said, no, you're not going to dance anymore, you're going to stay home and have kids and raise your kids. And came to me with breast cancer some 23, 25 years later after the marriage. And completely disillusioned. The husband doesn't show up at any of the visits. He gives her orders of how she's supposed to live her life. She's feeling very self-contained. And she's wishing, a whole part of her is wishing that she could just escape from this containment and have a chance to do it over again. And that creative energy, that's when we as naturopaths learn about the vital energy. And that vital energy is building and building. Life moves if we move with it or not. If we choose to move with it or not, life moves and moves through us. And it's moving through her, and it's meeting conscious restrictions and subconscious restrictions, and then it's getting grounded in the physical body, and it got grounded as cancer. And if we look at the cancer cell is basically moving from a place of differentiation, a breast cancer cell, or a breast cell, well differentiated, and it's basically saying, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mhm.
And it moves backwards into a state where it's no longer differentiated. It's completely undifferentiated. And then it starts to replicate over and over in that state.
Mhm.
Well, if we look at the consciousness of that basically is a cell choosing to go back to a place where it had the choice again.
Mhm.
Because all of our cells, as you know, when they start off undifferentiated. So they have the freedom to become any cell. And this is what we're talking about with some of the controversy over
Or stem cells.
over stem cells. Stem cells haven't differentiated into anything yet.
Right.
So they're like a child, free to become anything.
Mhm.
So this is, in a sense, her consciousness being routed into the body and expressing through the cell. The cell is acting out what she wants to do.
Is this something that you reflect to the patient when you're conversing with them in your office?
I reflect first by asking questions. I don't want to guide it. I don't want to tell them yet. I want them to discover it, because this is their discovery. I'm there to say, have you looked at, have you heard, did you think about that? You know, I've had patients come in with peptic ulcer disease who, as you're taking the history, are going, you know, I can't stomach this situation. I can't stomach it. I'm going, oh dear, what's the situation? Because that's the ulcer. And then I'll reflect that back. Did you hear what you were saying? Oh dear.
So is the repression, it comes out in a subconscious way? So in some it's going to be a breast cancer, in other people it's going to be an ulcer? Or does it manifest itself in a particular way with a particular problem?
Well, think about it. If you have an inflammatory disorder in the body, if I said, oh, Chris, don't become so inflamed, what's the connotation of that inflammation? Anger. So what is anger suppressed in the body? Maybe inflammation. Is there a reason, or is it just odd circumstance that we choose to use the words for both, the same word? Is it odd semantic idioms, odd reasons why we choose these semantic or expressions in our language of, I don't have the backbone, we don't have the guts, I can't shoulder this, I can't stomach it, you know, I don't have the skin for that, I can't see that. So we have all of these what are called idioms in our language that associate certain psycho-emotional reactions to physical situations.
Okay.
And I think that's just archetypal. That's just back in the subconscious, these relationships.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things do you provide to your patients to help them through this journey? Or
Well, certainly I do all the nuts and bolts first. I work very hard to practice just good, responsible medicine. And for me, that means if a patient comes in, let's say, with rheumatoid arthritis, the first thing is to look at the patient's whole medical history, to sit and take a good case history on the patient, to examine the patient, to find out where they are in the development of their disease and their pathology. Then to find out what drugs, medications are they on, and if they're not on a good medication regime, getting them on one. Does that mean that I prescribe prescriptive medications when I can? Yes. And if they're a medication that in this disease state and the degree of pathology is needed, yes. To make sure they're on a good nutritional regime. What kind of diet can we put this patient on which might be helpful? Well, certainly an anti-inflammatory diet. Lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, lots of colored vegetables, because those colored constituents in the plant kingdom are strong anti-inflammatory molecules. Putting them on high doses of fish oil, for instance. Good research all the way back into the late 80s, New England Journal of Medicine on fish oils and rheumatoid arthritis.
does everybody that come into your office get this kind of similar protocol, or does it vary quite a bit?
The protocol varies by what disease process we're dealing with, what the underlying pathology is. Pathology, both physical pathology, cellular pathology, as well as the psycho-emotional pathology. So we have to look at the whole case. That's what holistic medicine is about, in my book, is looking at the whole patient from a whole psycho-emotional point of view and biological, immunological, metabolic point of view.
And so what is the way that you find the cause, I guess, is
Well, certainly we want to identify, again, the physical pathology, because in my mind there is no difference between physical pathology and psycho-emotional pathology. If Inflammation is a good example of that. If there's inflammation as a primary pathological aspect to their disease process, then there's certainly anger and frustration deep inside the unconscious of that patient. And so we can do all of the things from anti-inflammatories, prescriptive or over-the-counter, to anti-inflammatory diets, anti-inflammatory nutrition, fish oils, etc. But if you're not changing the internal component, the internal driving force of that inflammation, which can be anger that usually goes back to family dynamics, peer dynamics, social dynamics. If we're not changing that and how they react to certain situations, then how far are we really going to heal this patient?
So do you work with them on that level?
Yes.
Or do you refer them to some other type of psychotherapist or something?
Yeah, to where I can. I mean, I'm certainly not a therapist. That's not what I'm here to do, but I do journey work, which is kind of like therapy. But where I see a need for therapy, if we really open up a can of worms and we see a clear, prominent bipolar disorder, prominent depression that's been there for a long time, a history of maybe sexual abuse, incest, then I certainly refer the patient to a number of psychiatrists or psychologists that I work with, and have them take that point, and then I stay in contact with them. And so where are they going? And we're talking on the phone and coordinating care of the patient.
And so what is it like going to a visit with you on your first time? Is it a long visit? Many naturopaths spend a lot of time.
I hope
it's
fun. That's a line, guys. That's great. Serve wine and tea.
Oh, serve wine, I'll be along.
Everybody's studying.
Well, it should be, and usually is with my patients, a very comfortable and safe experience. And the first thing always for any good physician and healthcare practitioner is to get a good, clear, accurate history. History of the immediate disease or immediate complaint, and certainly a history of the overall patient, medical history, social history, family history. So the first thing that I do with the patient is sit and talk. And first appointment is usually an hour. In some cases, we don't get all the information we need to get. And sometimes it's a second visit that also lasts an hour. Then once you have all of what's called the subjective information, then we want to get good objective information. Can we look at all the history, look at all that's going on in the patient, what kind of lab tests, what kind of CT scans, MRIs, what is it that we need to do to diagnose or get a sense of the degree of pathology that this process that they're presenting us with, what level it's in. So I do lab work.
What kind of lab work do you? There's a lot of variation in lab work in naturopathic medicine. What kind of lab tests do you use?
Well, we start with good, solid screening, commonly used lab tests. CBC with DIF, that's a blood count.
Right.
I look at lipid levels, I look at chemistries. Chemistries, as folks who are in medicine might know, includes looking at electrolyte levels, sodium and such, calcium levels, liver function, kidney function.
And so do you do any of the kind of more like allergy testing, for example, is very common?
Sure. My method is RAST testing if we're doing an IgE allergy test, looking for immediate allergies. And then sometimes I'll do an IgG4 ELISA if we're looking for delayed allergies.
And what about the different naturopathic tools do you use? Like some naturopaths use herbal medicine, some don't. Some use homeopathy, some don't. What are the kind of regular tools you see used in your practice?
I use whatever it takes to get my patient in the most optimal health as quickly as possible in the least invasive method. Sometimes that's surgery, sometimes that's even chemotherapy in some cases. So basically I'll use anything, but from the naturopathic modalities, I use homeopathy, I would easily say, in about 3/4 of all the patients that I see. Constitutional, yeah, if you want to use that term.
That's hydrotherapy? Or no, you're talking about
yeah.
homeopathy.
Homeopathy. And I'll do that, constitutional in terms of large doses or small doses, repeated doses or daily doses or monthly doses, whatever it takes. I'll use nutrition and diet for sure, and nutrition being supplements, and using various supplements, minerals, enzymes, vitamins, etc., oftentimes in medicinal levels or pharmaceutical levels to make changes within the patient biologically.
I'm just going to remind the audience about the call-in. So just so you know, that you can call in at 206-421-5004 if you have any questions about the journey. All right, Chris, do you have any questions?
I have a very general question, actually, and I hope it's not too general. How healthy are we? I mean, are we moving in our journeys? I mean, as a collective journey, are we moving? Are we getting healthier? Is society getting healthier or not? How are we doing?
We, meaning we as a human species?
As a society, yeah.
I don't think we are right now.
No, neither do I, but I'd like your perspective on that.
I don't think we are.
What's going wrong?
Well, moving from a medical answer to that question and going more towards the spiritual, mystical, whatever term, or philosophical. There is an old mystical belief, and that's from Western mysticism as well as Eastern mysticism, but in all of the Western Christian and Judaic mystical practices, there is a belief that where we begin to go wrong is when we begin to externalize our selfness, externalize our identity, instead of internalizing it. And I see many of us now living an intensely externalized lifestyle. We watch TV, everything is, who we are is defined by how we act in the world, our relationship to things, our relationship to people. We're externalized by cell phones.
We're becoming more superficial.
Becoming, yeah.
That's what you're saying.
In many ways, yeah.
How do
we don't
act?
live a rich internal life.
And that's the journey to become more internal.
Yes.
That would be the society's journey to do that. Okay.
What are signs of an internal society?
Well, an internal society.
Would a kibbutz be like an internal society, perhaps?
No, I have a great example. It just came to me a couple weeks ago in a conversation that I was having, and it was based on portion, an old term that Taylor and I joke about, portion. There is a way, if you've ever seen Native American Indians, for instance, they might come by and they just come over and they'll sit at your house. Nice day. And an hour later, good to see you.
It's making me feel very tense.
Yeah, good to see you. But it doesn't make him feel tense, you see.
It's making me feel tense.
But sure, well, lots of people are watching right now.
Is that because I'm superficial and I'm just not hearing you? I need you to speak. Is that what?
Yeah, that's the externalization. But in Native American culture, they come, they sit, they be together. So the difference with externalization and internalization is when we live an internal life, we be. And then we do from that beingness. In an external life, we don't know how to be. We do.
Yeah.
So everything is externalized.
But we're still very social.
We're still social. There's nothing non-social about sitting together. Did you ever just sit with someone and watch a beautiful sunrise? Or a beautiful sunset? Or just look at the stars at night? When I was a little kid, I had a friend live down the street, and I remember many times we'd lay in my driveway because it would be nice and hot after a summer's day. And you'd lay in the driveway with your heads next to each other and just be looking at the stars and maybe say 8 sentences in an hour or two. But there was an intense bonding that happened.
Okay.
Think about being with a lover and lying quiet with a lover in your arms at night and falling to sleep together. That quiet point, those maybe 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes of no conversation, of just lying there and experiencing the moment together.
Okay.
The bonding that happens, the chemistry that gets changed. That's being together.
And how about watching a really, really good film? Is that not the same thing?
It is in a sense, but then again, now you're starting to externalize in a way in which you are projecting your experience into that. That's an externalization. If you're watching a beautiful sunset, it's more like you're taking that in, and less like you're projecting yourself into a melodrama that's happening outside of you.
Okay.
The melodrama is becoming internalized when you're watching the sunrise.
Okay.
So we're nearing the end of the show, which is sad. But we do want to get some information out about your clinic. So where can you be reached by phone?
I can be reached at my clinic, which is the University Health Clinic. And the telephone number is 206-525-8015. I can also be reached through my emails. I have a personal web page, and that's pdonovan.com, and that's DONOVAN, pdonovan.com, or my clinic web page, which is theuhc.com.
Great. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
It's very good to have you. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Tyler.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for watching the show, and we'll see you next week, another live episode, The Naturopathic Perspective. Thank you, and have a good night.